about.
Well, that's better news.
Yeah.
But
So, don't know.
if I was a better man, which will also.
Good evening, everyone. I'll call the meeting to order. And want to say welcome to, hard to believe, November 1st meeting of the St. John Common Council. Hope everyone enjoyed Halloween last night, and that's why we're here this evening. We have some staff and obviously councillors that have small kids who enjoyed having their parents with them last night. So tonight we're going to start off with a land acknowledgement, and Councillor Ogden of Ward 2 is going to read that for us tonight. Over to you, Councillor Ogden.
The city of St. John, Mennequest, is situated in the traditional territory of the Wolastoqey. The Wolastoqey, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and Passamaquoddy, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources. Have a moment of silence, please.
Can I ask everyone to stand, please, for the national anthem? Thank you again to the St. John High Choir. Beautiful. Okay, City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. First item on the agenda is item 2.1, minutes of October the 17th.
Minutes of October 17th. The Deputy and Councillor Sullivan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is the approval of the agenda, and there are 3 items that have come from closed session, and those would be items 17.1, legal action against city insurer, 17.2, IT quality assurance, and 17.3, legal proceeding against BCG Engineer, Inc.
Okay, I will ask for a motion with the 3 items that are included from Committee of the Whole. Councillor Kiln and Councillor Radwan. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is disclosures of conflict of interest, if there are any.
Okay, not seeing any conflicts of interest. Next item.
Next item is the consent agenda.
Deputy, over to you, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move 5.1 through to 5.7, please.
Okay, Councillor Radwan.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I would like to pull 5.7, and then I just have a brief comment. And I see Executive Director is here from Uptown St. John, Nancy Tisington. And as somebody who is part of the Uptown business community, anybody who is looking to open a business or has a business, I highly encourage you to get involved in Uptown St. John. And I know that the city has a good relationship with Uptown St. John, and I hope for us to look for always new ways for us to foster and improve that relationship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Your Worship. Since 5.7 is requested being pulled to later discussion, I'll save my comments for that for later. But also just a comment on the BIA 2023 budget. It's been quite a year for the Uptown, whether it be the Memorial Cup and all the endeavors that went into that, the work that went into that, the volunteers, right to a number of events that have brought vibrancy to the Uptown. Just wanted to thank Uptown St. John and Nancy for all the hard work they've been doing, and we're really excited about 2023 and the plans and the work to come. You know, even just seeing on the tail end of this successful year, Jardine Alley getting lit up and having some attention drawn to it, it's been great. So,
Thank you. Councillor Harris and Councillor Radwan, do you have a quick question about 5.7 that you want to ask now versus pulling it? Councillor Harris?
Sorry, Your Worship, I'll defer to Councillor Wadwan. She wanted to pull it, so I'll hold my comments.
Okay, so we'll do Deputy 5.
Okay, so I'm going to I'll move 5.1 through to 5.6, then, Your Worship.
Okay. And have the seconder, Councillor Sullivan. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. So City Clerk, 5.7 will become
Your Worship, that will become 14.1.
14.1? 14.1 is 5.7 consent. All right. Next item then, City Clerk.
Next on the agenda is members' comments.
Members' comments, this is the 2-minute speed round. Let's see who's up first. Councillor Sullivan, please ask everyone to watch your numbers there on the screen. Councillor Sullivan, over to you.
You took 10 seconds of my
What
time,
happens?
Your Worship.
Okay, I'm giving you an extra 10.
I know you can tell from my Tom Selleck-esque mustache that's coming in here that it's Movember. And so I'm out on my social media looking for money to support men's health, but also really to share the message about men's health in Movember, that it's incredibly important. Movember as a charity supports men's mental health, also fight against prostate cancer and testicular cancer. So for those of you who are my vintage, very important to go get checked out with your doctor, but also important to talk about mental health because men tend to not talk about mental health. It's okay to not be okay. So make sure you're talking about it. It's Movember, and maybe by December you'll be able to see something that rivals Councillor Harris's over there, or not, but I'm trying. Shout out to Deputy McKenzie, Councillor Ogden, Actually, Minister Holder and I, with the help of a few city staff, had a great meeting with the Tucker Park Recreation Association about a project that they are interested in moving forward. While we talk about our partners at other levels of government about big projects, it's nice to know that we can talk about them about smaller projects as well. And shout out to our city staff who was there, who was very, very helpful. And finally, back to the health front, but for everybody, not just the men out there. The past 2 weeks saw my left shoulder take a booster and a flu shot, so it's a little bruised today, but I am happily bruised knowing that I am vaccinated for the 4th time against COVID and my annual flu shot. So please, 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 doctors say it is a good thing. You should do it. Wear your masks. Recognize that other people are wearing masks. They may be immunocompromised. Wash your hands, sneeze into your elbow. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Good timing. Councillor Stewart?
Just one thing for me, Your Worship. So November the 17th is Thursday night. It's the annual Pro Kids fundraising gala dinner. And this will be the first one back since pre-COVID. And because I sit on the advisory committee, there's a lot of excitement around the table that all of the outlying communities that contribute to Pro Kids, they want their councils or as many representatives to go to the dinner as possible. So I'm asking, the city does have a table, I think maybe even 2 tables. So if everybody's available, it would be fantastic for us all to show support. We all know the value of Pro Kids, but I certainly don't want to be outdone by the outlying communities because we are the biggest contributor to Pro Kids, the city of St. John. So hope to see you there. There are seats available. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It's a good cause. Councillor Harris?
Well, Your Worship, I know that people didn't think it could continue, but we still have a hashtag City of Champions piece to celebrate. So on October 22nd, which was just a few days after our last council meeting, I had the honor and privilege of handing out the Maritime Final Cup to the Wheaton Cup to the men's Trojans team here in St. John. You'll remember earlier on in the summer, the women won the Provincial Cup. Our men won the Provincial Cup and then went to compete for the Wheaton Cup against Enfield, Nova Scotia, and it was a barn burner of a game over on Hazen White. And the men managed to pull out a 5-point win with the last 5 minutes to go. So this would be the 9th major championship the city of St. John has pulled in. And it's a really good news story. Again, that really started back with the Memorial Cup when the Sea Dogs won that. So that's been a great piece. And then another shout out goes to a local contractor, Harvey Jesso at Maritime Carpentry. He was just recognized with an invitation to an international contractors. It's called the Contractors Handbook. And it's a podcast that features contractors from all over North America that are really shining in their field. Harvey Jesso started Maritime Carpentry about 4 years ago. And since then, he's branched out to start another company within Maritime Carpentry called Maritime Electrical. And he would be the lead contractor on that. He's now got a team of about 20 people doing amazing work in the city, having really, really sterling reviews from anybody who does work for. And it's just another good news story of a St. Johnner kind of shining on the national, international scale. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Killen?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think St. John really loves Halloween. Last night was an incredible display. Shout out to our Fundy Heights neighbors for some of the incredible haunted houses. There was 2 significant displays from folks up in Fundy Heights. Also, I got to attend the St. John Horticultural Society and the Rockwood Campgrounds Spook Trail, which was incredible. The artistry around some of the displays that they had was like incredible. Also, I was part of a panel this past week with the Future Cities, which did a focus on housing innovation and government. And I was there with Anna Baleo, the Deputy Mayor of Toronto, Laura Cabot, the Mayor of Whitehorse, Rebecca Alty, the mayor of Yellowknife, Courtney Walcott, the councillor for City of Calgary, as well. The whole event was hosted by Steve Paikin, who recently just published a book on the 17th Prime Minister of Canada, John Turner. So quite the group that I got to sit with and discuss issues around housing, and from the Northwest Territories to here, the issues are very, very similar, and there was a lot of great insights there from folks about ways we can move forward on that. Also, the Community Arts Board, the grants are open right now. So if you're looking to do something really interesting and cool and creative, there's lots of opportunities there for you to apply for that. And on this final lightning round point, exciting week for Chop Chop. If you are uptown, there's a number of restaurants, smaller spots like mine at Slocum and Ferris, et cetera, in the market, who are doing really innovative, creative dishes this week. So get out and support local. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Good reminder about Chop Chop. And happy to hear that it was a good decision to change over from Monday to Tuesday night with all the fun you had on last night. Councillor Radwan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, it's a yummy week in Uptown St. John. I did get to attend an Avenue B AGM meeting, which is great. They're doing a lot of great work in our community. There was a few of us that got to the Rockmore Gala, and I'd just like to make mention, a big thank you to the Sisters of Charity, who are just gems in our community, donated $50,000 at this event to the Rockmore Nursing Home. I also got to attend, the Red Latin group had invited us to the Latin American Cultural Festival. And this group actually started off with 4 people in January, and now they have over 400 people as members of their group. And they just blew the roof off of Market Square. Like, I don't think Market Square knew what hit it when there was salsa classes being taught in the middle of Market Square. It was just phenomenal. I also was very happy to attend the St. John Tool Library fundraiser. And I understand that the fall fundraiser is carrying on into the fall. Something that was great that we got to attend was at Lily Lake, we had the Fire Service Awards. And I'd just like to congratulate all the firefighters. It was incredible to see the list of names of people that have served our city for 20, 25, 30, 35, and Chief Clifford, who has been with the City of St. John for 40 years. Congratulations, and thank you so much for your service. I also wanted to mention on Saturday, this Saturday is actually Diwali. And for anybody who doesn't know what Diwali is, it's our Hindu community are celebrating the Festival of Lights, and it's going to take place at Samuel de Champlain. The Indo-Canadian community is expecting about 500 people. This is an incredible event to attend if you're able to. And Hospitality St. John is actually going to be having their event on November the 10th, where they showcase all of the great people at the front of the house doing service in our city. And it's a really great event to attend. And that's happening at the Delta on the 10th of November. And just on a personal note, I thought that I should make mention so I don't end up on the couch. Happy belated 14-year anniversary to my love, Ehab. 14 years goes by so fast. So anyway, happy anniversary. He's been a great partner in life and in business. So thank you, Mayor.
Congratulations, Councillor, to you and your husband. Councillor Norton.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Well, I guess the West Side, Ward 1, it's going to the dogs, and with that, be appropriate to have a dog park. And that's going to happen on Sunday, November the 6th, 12 o'clock p.m., 701 Dever Road. Be there with your hound. We'll have some swag to give out. And thanks to JDI and our partners for making that possible. It's I always remember former Councillor Strobridge was the king of the dog parks. And playgrounds, to be honest with you. But he always served well. And whether they were four-legged constituents or two-legged constituents, folks benefited from his service. And so, Councillor Strobridge, you may have better things to do this evening than listen to council, but if you don't, West Side's got a dog park. So, congratulations. A couple other recognizable names in the queue. Congratulations to Rick Goslin, Cynthia Johnson, Bruce Melanson, Malcolm Nielsen, Charlie Sullivan Jr., and Kevin Watson, who served many years right here for Leisure Services, Parks and Recreation, City of St. John community, from one ward to the next, on being inducted into the Greater St. John Sports Hall of Fame. So 6 inductees were well represented in terms of sports and recreation. So congratulations to those fine folks. More information on when you can join the celebration for that. And one more quick thing, just to get out of the recreation space a little bit. We often talk about growth around this table, and it's good to see that we're doing it. The numbers are in, and I know that there's going to be more to come at the November 28th meeting of Common Council, but St. John attracted close to 2,500 immigrants between 2016 and 21, which is a 228% increase over the previous census period. We keep on with that. The St. John Census metropolitan area attracted over 3,000 immigrants in total over that same period. And the city of St. John attracted 81.5% of all the immigrants living in the region, up from 78% previously. And to continue that positive news, over 5,500 immigrants are now living in the city of St. John. 45% of all immigrants arrived between 2016 and 2021. They're not only changing our culture, our face, but they're also changing our attitudes. And good work, not only this corporation, but the nonprofit sector, the partners, the community, and the neighbors that they call, I guess, neighbors in their community and their streets, for making them feel welcome. We're all ambassadors and we all have a job to do. So congratulations to everybody for ticking those numbers up. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for reminding us about those great numbers. Councillor Sullivan, over to you.
Sorry, my apologies, Your Worship. I forgot to send out the teaser for Thursday afternoon at 4:30 on the St. John channels is the Finance Committee meeting, and we'll have the presentation of the draft operational budget. This meeting will answer the question of why do I study math in school?
Thank you, Councillor. I know everyone's getting it into their calendars immediately. City Clerk, next item.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next item on the agenda is 7.1, and it's a proclamation for Lung Cancer Awareness Month.
Okay, before I read this proclamation, I just want to say a couple of things. One is, you've heard of the CAT scan, CT. It's computer-aided tomography, which I'm going to talk about in this proclamation tonight. And what it does, it's different from a chest X-ray, is that it looks at your lung for a CT on your lungs in slices. And that's different, and then it lines up those slices so you can look at, in millimeters, slices of the lung tissue. So that's the differential you'll hear about in this. Whereas lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death among men and women in Canada, accounting for more deaths than colon cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer combined. And whereas over 20,000 Canadians are expected to die of lung and bronchitis cancer by the end of 2022, representing nearly 1/4 of all cancer deaths in Canada. And whereas according to research by Canadian oncologists, lung cancer is expected to be the most commonly diagnosed cancer in Canada, with over 30,000 new lung cancer cases expected by the end of this year. And whereas the 5-year survival rate for localized lung cancer is 60%, yet only 24% of lung cancers are diagnosed at the localized stage. And whereas screening for lung cancer for high-risk individuals using low-dose computer tomography can lead to the earlier detection of lung cancer and save lives, reducing mortality by 20% when compared to screening by chest X-ray in the National Lung Screening Trials, therefore reducing the risk of death by 10 years in 24% of men and 33% of women, as demonstrated by another large random trial. And whereas funding for lung cancer research trails far behind funding for research of many other cancers, and additional research is needed in early diagnosis, screening, and treatment for lung cancer, as well as in lung cancer affecting women and lung cancer health disparities. And whereas organizations working in Canada
such as the Canadian Lung Cancer Screening Initiative, are committed to educating in regards to lung cancer screening, and working to increase lung cancer screening rates. Now therefore, I, Mayor Donna Node-Reardon of St. John, do hereby proclaim November 2022 as Lung Cancer Awareness Month in the City of St. John, and recognize the need for research in lung cancer affecting women and lung cancer health disparities, and encourage all citizens to learn about lung cancer and early detection through lung cancer screening. Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Next, we have a presentation, Your Worship. It's item 8.1 on the agenda, and it's for Crane Mountain Enhancement, Inc.
Crane Mountain. Who's introducing this one, John? Oh, okay. Commissioner Hugenholtz?
Good evening, Your Worship. This evening with us, we have Tom Simpson with the Crane Mountain Enhancement, Inc. This is a volunteer-based committee that represents host communities near Crane Mountain. It was established at the time of development and is intended to advise on issues relating to landfill operations. I understand he has some additional board members with him this evening to help with him.
Mr. Simpson, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. Your Worship, Mayor Reardon, Deputy Mayor Mackenzie, members of Common Council, thank you for the opportunity to present this evening on behalf of Crane Mountain Enhancement, Inc., better known as CMEI. My name is Tom Simpson. I was elected as a director of CMEI in 2008 and have been the chair since 2010. Our presenters this evening are John Dowd. He's the vice chair and director, has been on our board for 3 years. And our newest director is Laura Bonga, and she's a recent graduate of Acadia University. She has a passion for the environment, which makes her a good fit for CMEI. Both are residents of Westfield Road communities that could be impacted should the landfill have a significant leachate accident. Other board members in attendance tonight are John Bidgood, Lori Nason, and Patty Chisholm.
I'll say welcome to everyone then. I really appreciate you all being here tonight.
Our board is dedicated to the community, environmental monitoring, and stewardship in the host communities of St. John and Grand Bay Westfield. Thank you. I'll turn it over to John Dowd.
Good evening, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, Council members. The mandate of CMEI focuses on two major items. First and most importantly, we monitor the operations of the Crane Mountain landfill. Secondly, we provide oversight of the distribution of the enhancement funds provided by the Service Commission. We evaluate the applications for funding, recommend which projects receive funding, and following approval by the Commission, we administer the delivery of funds. The amount of the funds is indexed, and this year we're distributing just under $100,000 to local projects, bringing our overall total since the start of the landfill to almost $2 million. This aerial photo shows the large geographic footprint of the landfill. Its location is at the heart of a rich natural ecosystem, and any leakage of the leachate will flow through the host communities into the river of St. John. The host communities are all within the city of St. John. The photo shows a view looking right up the Kennebecasis River, with Kennebecasis Island and the Kingston Peninsula in the background on the left, and Milledgeville in the background on the right. On the near shore of the St. John River, on the left-hand side, you can see Blueberry Hill on the left, and moving to the right, Montanon, Mona, Ketapek, Belmont, Accomack, the St. John Marina, and just off to the right is South Bay. The landfill is also adjacent to the town of Grand Bay Westfield and to two nature preserves operated by the Nature Trust of New Brunswick, Blueberry Hill and Noramac. The aerial photograph provides a powerful perspective with respect to the Crane Mountain operation and the vast operational footprint. When the landfill was first proposed, there was strong opposition by the residents of the area, and some of the meetings to which the residents were invited became quite contentious, lasting long through the evenings. As a result of this opposition, the New Brunswick Department of the Environment, as it was at the time, imposed a number of conditions when the environmental impact assessment was approved. Two of those conditions resulted in the Order of Council, which created CMEI. CMEI is an independent, community-based volunteer committee. The board members are residents of the community, and we're elected by those residents. And there is a current list of the board. Two of the members, unfortunately, couldn't make it tonight. Also, in order to keep us up to date with environmental and technical issues related to the landfill, we contract support from EXP, one of our 4 environmental engineering companies with locations in New Brunswick. The images at the bottom of the slide are from the Blueberry Hill Nature Preserve, which has been supported by grants funded by the landfill. Many community volunteers have turned out to build the bridge, build boardwalks, an ongoing task to keep the preserve in good order. Laura.
Thanks, John. I'm just going to summarize some of what John has already said in this next slide, but the Crane Mountain landfill is located adjacent to several residential neighborhoods within both St. John and the town of Grand Bay Westfield, and is upstream of various ecologically significant watersheds within the region, as demonstrated by the photo. It is also in proximity to 2 nature preserves. The landfill is located upstream of nearly 1,000 residential wells, all within the city of St. John. The CMEI has several ongoing environmental considerations. One of them involves the local geology. The bedrock underneath the landfill is fractured, which is a potential pathway for landfill leachate to enter the aquifer. Monitoring wells are monitored in strategic locations both off and on the landfill site in case leakage occurs. In addition, a computer model was developed to predict direction and flow rate of any contaminants in the groundwater. We actively use instrumentation to monitor groundwater flow to verify the computer model's predictions. Another environmental consideration is the structure of the cell liners in the landfill. The current landfill liner construction method uses a clay base with an HDPE landfill liner. To continue with this landfill system, a new source of marine clay would be required. Instead of the current method, there will be a new design for future landfill cells at the Crane Mountain landfill, which uses a new synthetic double liner system.
In 2019, the Service Commission applied for an environmental impact assessment to extract marine clay from a site adjacent to the landfill. CMEI worked to ensure that the EIA included a number of strict conditions. We also opposed amendments to the St. John Municipal Plan and a rezoning request. The EIA was approved by the Department of the Environment and Local Government, but the project was abandoned. However, the Plan SJ amendments and rezoning were left in place, which points to a need for municipal sunset clauses for projects that don't proceed.
We would like to emphasize that the landfill is a permanent part of our community's environment and ecosystem. The Fundy region municipalities created it and are collectively responsible for all legacy and residual impacts in the coming years. Continuing to enhance waste diversion is critical to extending the life of the landfill. Congratulations to the City of St. John on the launch of the new curbside recycling program. The Crane Mountain landfill presents a permanent environmental risk that will persist centuries after its closure. In conclusion, we quote Plan SJ, referring specifically to progressive environmental policies and promoting a sustainable St. John. We share these goals because we are dedicated to working with the FRSC, NBDELG, and the City of St. John to support the environmental protection and long-term sustainability of the host communities. We believe the CMEI is a great example of a legally binding volunteer environmental monitoring committee that should lead as an example to future development projects in St. John. This structure has allowed Tom and the rest of the committee to establish a strong relationship with the Fundy Regional's Service Commission and Mark McLeod. The CMEI would like to be an active participant in any future reviews and the renewal of Plan SJ, particularly with the respect to the opportunity to protect the city's unique natural and heritage assets while enriching our quality of life. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to present to you today. Please ask us any questions that you may have.
Okay, Laura, John, and Tom, we do have some questions coming up. Councillor Norton, you're up first.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Tom, Laura, because I've had the pleasure of working with Laura on some projects in the past, and I know some of you from our Westfield Road community, and thank you for the work that you've done. I did. It's more of a comment than a question, but I didn't want you to leave without you appreciating the fact that not for all of council, I don't speak for all of council, but in recent discussions, it's been mentioned the same concern that you have as it relates to municipal sunset clauses on projects. In fact, it was part of a healthy discussion recently, and I remember where I was when Municipal Hall was transitioning into this space upstairs when extracting the clay out of that site for that particular cell became a very heated discussion in terms of the longevity of not only the landfill, but how it could impact negatively upon the host communities, if I can put it that way. And sunset clauses on municipal projects, whether it's rezoning of particular parcels of land like that keep communities, I guess, not in hostage, but certainly wary of what could take place. We're aware of that and working towards that. The same with, whether it's buildings that have failed to take form. So thank you for that. This council, and I know others have heard you on that, and it's something we need to revisit, particularly for folks within this area. So thank you for all you do and coming in and speaking. It's appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harris?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And thank you to the team for coming and giving us a brief on this. I'm one of those wells that's within stone's throw here of this. So I guess from a strategic perspective, is there anything, I guess, in an ongoing conversation? I mean, you mentioned a few things that are high level that are important to note, but is there anything that's needed for consideration and in the future, from your perspective, with regards to the future of this landfill? And I know that's a very big open-ended question, but I'm assuming there's a number of things you've all talked about, and it's not something we hear about very often. I'm sure Deputy Mayor McKenzie could mention a few of them, but I'd be curious if there are any of these big pieces of the puzzle that you would see need to be considered or need to be brought to the table for a wider discussion.
I'm really concerned about what happens after the landfill. So basically the long-term closure of the landfill. And I think they're obligated to monitor it for 30 years, but I'm not sure that 30 years is enough. And so that's one thing that people in government can keep in mind and perhaps help us out on that. Anything else?
The only real problem with that is in 30 years, many of us won't be around. So passing it on to the next generation is very important.
I was gonna say, because a lot of the breakdown times of some of the materials that are going to that landfill are much longer than 30 years. I know they've made a lot of advancements on that front. I remember when I worked for a car dealership back in my early days, they had just brought the average time of breaking of some of the parts just due to certain fiber bonding that they did on car parts from, I think it was 500 years to 100 years. So it's still there's still a long term there. So that's definitely an important feature. But
There's a lot of stuff in the landfill which is going to be here for a long time.
Right.
Thank you, Councillor. It's great to hear that because we just, as you mentioned, are into our recycling program, and that certainly amplifies the expediency of the program and encourages everyone, while it's not mandatory, but it certainly encourages everyone to participate. Appreciate that. Councillor Ogden, you're up next.
I'd just like to thank you for your volunteerism, and without people like you being advocates and oversight, our community doesn't work. So I'd like to thank you all for your volunteer time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just wrap it up. I just want to thank you for coming in, and I can tell you I go out to the landfill once a month for meetings on the Regional Service Commission, and your efforts are not going unnoticed. You know, when I go out there, I've been going to, well, we used to call them the dump, we don't anymore, but we have come so far through groups like yourself, your efforts. You know, when you see a pile of this here and a pile of that there, and you don't throw batteries out, you put them over there. There's where your oil goes. I mean, that takes a lot of, effort and organization. And so it's people like you that make that stuff happen. So I just want to thank you very much for what you're doing, and keep up the good work, and thanks again. Thank you.
I'll say thank you as well. I mean, it is incredible work, and it's so necessary what you are doing, and it really has been moving ahead. It's interesting because I think the last big discussion that I recall for Crane Mountain was we need more marine grade clay. But I see in your presentation it says that they'll be able to use the new synthetic double liner system. So when I didn't think the province allowed that, so that must have changed in the last few years versus marine grade clay.
The landfill in the city of Moncton recently had a survey done on a particular double liner and got approval from the Environment Department. So we're seeking the same kind of approval for Crane Mountain.
Right. Well, that would make sense. I certainly remember at the time looking for marine grade clay, self-healing. Wasn't that easy to find, so it's definitely a step in the right direction. But listen, thanks again to you and the rest of your team for coming tonight. Really appreciate it. Great information for us and encouraging for us as well, because like I said, our new recycling program has had a few little bumps, so it's good for us to get, that see how it links and interfaces with your program as well. It just strengthens that whole concept of it. So appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you. I'll take a receive and file. Councillor Stewart and Councillor Lowe on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. City Clerk, next item.
Your Worship, next item is 10.1 on your agenda under consideration of bylaws, and this is for a municipal plan and zoning bylaw amendment with Section 59 conditions for 1461 Manawagonish Road. And Commissioner Hamilton will give a brief overview.
Okay, Commissioner Hamilton, over to you, please.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Before you this evening for third reading is an application for a municipal plan and zoning bylaw amendment, which was submitted by Hughes Surveys on behalf of the Brennan Group for a property located at 1461 Manawagonish Road on the city's west side. The application seeks to redesignate the site from regional retail to stable residential and rezone the property from commercial corridor to mid-rise residential in order to facilitate the conversion of the existing building on site to permit the development of an 18-unit residential development. The application did receive first and second reading on October 17th following the required public hearing. And I can confirm that all legislative requirements under the Community Planning Act have been met, and now council is in a position to move forward with third reading and approval of the required Section 59 conditions. And with that as an introduction, I'll turn it back over to your worship for the required motions.
Thank you, Commissioner. So City Clerk, I'll turn it over to you for the motions required.
Thank you, Your Worship. For this matter, we require 5 motions for approval. To begin with, it would be the municipal plan amendment. We would require a motion for third reading in entirety, and then another motion, third reading by title.
Okay, I need Councillor Lowe for third reading in entirety, and Councillor Harris on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried with Councillor Stewart, nay. On the next, next
And I
motion.
just have to read this out
Oh, sorry.
quickly.
Take a motion for third reading by title, the deputy and Councillor Sullivan. On the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Next, we have submission by council members under item 11, and the first is 11.1, submission by Councillor Ogden, derelict buildings.
Councillor, I will hand it over to you to read your motion. If you get a seconder, you can introduce it.
Thank you, Mayor. The council refers to Growth Committee for consideration a proposal to shorten or petition for the time period for fixing derelict buildings. The intent is for buildings to be fixed right away and in a way that they do not deteriorate neighborhoods, and the owners of unkept, unsafe, vacant lots are made to clean and cut them on a regular basis. Should there be any impacts of existing resources or budgets related to this motion, they should be referred to the Finance Committee for consideration.
Sorry. So seconder on the motion. Councillor Radwan. This is a referral motion. So I guess I'm calling the question. All in favor? 3. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I've got Councillor Norton, Councillor Stewart, Councillor Sullivan, the Deputy, Councillor Harris, Councillor Killen opposed. Motion fails. Okay, next item, City Clerk. Councillor?
Yes, I'm sorry, wasn't Councillor Ogden able to speak on his motion?
It's not on a referral.
Oh, okay,
It's a
perfect.
referral.
No,
Yeah,
thank you for the
because we're going
clarification,
to
that's
ask an
great.
opinion, right?
Appreciate it,
On a
yeah.
referral. Next item, City Clerk.
Your Worship, item 11.2 on your agenda is a submission by the Deputy Mayor entitled Council Motions.
Deputy, I'll pass it over to you. If you want to read your motion and you have a seconder, you can introduce it.
Thank you, Your Worship. The motion is the council direct the city manager to review best practices and report back with a recommendation on an effective process related to the drafting and submitting of motions to council for its consideration.
Have a seconder. Councillor Lowe is a seconder. Okay, Councillor, back to you to introduce it. Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. During my time on council, I've noticed that from time to time, a motion will appear on our agenda that is unclear or not concise or may not be appropriate. We spend a lot of time, our time, staff's time, and the public's time discussing the intent of the motion and what the mover is looking for in a result. To improve the efficiency and effectiveness of council meetings, to improve clarification of a motion put forward, and to allow sufficient time for all stakeholders to consider the motion, I'm requesting a review of best practices for presenting a motion to council and for staff to report back with recommendations.
Thank you. For questions, Councillor Radwan, you have your light on?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to mention, I understand the spirit of this motion. I appreciate that. However, the one thing that I want to say is that I feel that when councilors are bringing motions forward, that's democracy, and getting bureaucracy involved in democracy isn't always the way. I think that most of us, before we're bringing motions forward, we would have already discussed things with staff to get input, insight, and, if it boils down to a counselor coming forward and bringing some things that are unclear, I think it's also very important for the public to see that. So that's just why I'm not supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ogden?
Yeah, if we need thought about this, like a 2-week thought about it, I don't have a problem there. If it's going to a bureaucracy that's not elected, and then it's come back and is rewritten, I do have a problem there because we are elected officials to run this city. And so if it's being rewritten and manipulated, it could be, then that goes against everything an elected official stands for. And so that's what I would be afraid of here, is that we're limiting debate and thought, and we're limiting democracy if it goes away and it's rewritten. If it comes back with the intent of the writer wrote and then changed, I don't have a problem there. But I think that it's really dangerous when you see what's going on in the world, where we start to pass off our responsibility as elected officials and pass it on to unelected bureaucratic officials. And so that's what I would have a problem with. If it comes back still written the way it was intended and then changed, I don't have a problem there.
Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Worship. When I first read this motion, my gut reaction was actually pretty much the same as Councillor Radwin has explained. I've sat around here for a long time, and I think it is certainly incumbent, and not only an opportunity, but I think it is an obligation of a councillor to bring motions forward if they think it will move the city further ahead. Upon further reflection, I still have that concern, but I'm certainly willing to investigate best practices and see something come back, because the other piece of it I've experienced in my time here is sometimes we have a very well thought out, spur of the moment, something happened last week, submit on a Wednesday, and the following Monday we make a policy decision that perhaps needs a week or two of sober second thought, as they sometimes say. So I'm guarded. I want to make sure that a councillor's intent in a motion does carry through. But I think the investigation of best practices in this, I think that's worthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Norton?
Yeah, and the deputy can, I'm kind of speaking as I think here, but the deputy can provide clarity if I'm off base here. I saw the spirit of this motion as simply that, just investigating best practices, not to prohibit anybody from doing what has already been mentioned by Councillor Radwan, or guess what? If there is a motion on the fly, and I think for the majority council that this motions on the fly are somewhat ill-advised, but just to look at best practice and process that councillors give good, sober second thought or good consideration of putting it through the appropriate filters, which are professional staff, to make sure that that motion is written clearly and concisely and in lockstep with whether it's a 10-year strategic plan, whether it's with our financial policies, whether it's within growth committee, whether it's within public safety committee, some of those key priority areas, and that it doesn't undermine any of those. And always, it's like having your mom or dad read your essay before you submit it to your grade 10 English teacher. It's not a bad idea to have another eye. It's always advised, and to get good, positive, constructive feedback. Hey, listen, I think that that's appropriate. And if there's things that we're missing that are within that process wheel, then by all means, I think it could be there, and we could certainly take advantage of the city manager's suggestions. I don't think anything is prohibiting you from doing that. You can be as reckless and as abandoned as you want with your motions, and no one's going to stop you. I guarantee you the common clerk's still going to put them on. In fact, I believe to a degree he's caused to put them on. That doesn't mean that they're well-trained, well-versed, and well-articulated motions. This is just a process to refine the material that we're bringing forth for consideration. And the better refined it is, the better consumed it's going to be, and the better it is for the people that ultimately are going to include it as part of their diet out there in the public realm. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy, would you like to wrap up your
Thank you, Your Worship. Good thoughts, certainly. You know, I think that when we put a motion forward, and I've done it myself, I think everybody does it, you think this was a very straightforward motion until you start hearing other perspectives on it, and you say, oh, maybe it wasn't quite so straightforward as I thought it was. So I think by, you know, having a look at best practices around the country, you know, you're sort of performing a continuous improvement exercise to see if there's something somebody else is doing that we could be doing better and making better use of our time. So anyway, I thank you for the comments, and I look forward to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Deputy. Before I call the question, I'll just say from my perspective as well that when you've got your list here of your agenda, there isn't anything on here that we're going to decide tonight that doesn't have staff input except for these 3 motions by councillors. So I find sometimes I don't have enough background, the corporate background. I don't know what the impacts may be. So I find they're almost like motions on the fly to a certain extent, and they just lack a little bit of transparency for me. So I'm happy to have this sent off, hopefully, and have the best practices looked at. So I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? 1, 2. 2 opposed. So I have Councillor Harris and Councillor Radwan opposed. Motion carried. Thank you, team. Next item, City Clerk.
Your Worship, next item is another submission by a council member. It's item 11.3 on your agenda, entitled Regional Service Commission Update to Gardner Penfoil Report, submitted by Councillor Sullivan.
Councillor Sullivan, over to you.
After that last discussion, I almost feel awkward, but we'll see where it goes. The motion is the City of St. John, through our representative, Deputy Mayor Mackenzie, ask the Regional Services Commission to undertake a study that would update the Gardner Penfold Greater St. John Regional Task Force analysis report that would include costs for all of our regional partners in supporting each other.
Seconder, Councillor Norton. Okay, Councillor, you can introduce your motion.
Thanks, councillors. Really, certainly there is an important regional discussion going on, and Councillor Mackenzie, as our representative, gets to sit in the middle of it more than the rest of us. But we are certainly hearing in the community is regionalization as a concept, I think, is really important, and people understand on the ground. I think it's having some growing pains, and certainly in our region, we hear it in the community. Part of, I guess, the St. John perspective in a lot of the work we did, and we did in partnership with the province leading up to our 3-part plan, had to do with the expense in the City of St. John, and part of that was the provincial study done by Gardner and Penfold that showed very specific areas that it cost the City of St. John about $12.3 million every year to help service our region when people come into the City of St. John, the extra road use and those sorts of things. And I think it might be valuable, and I hope, you know, I think through council, and I've discussed this a little with Deputy Mackenzie, for a regional version of this report, and really, if the RSC were to talk to their provincial partners about having a financial analysis of the region, so it's not a he said, she said sort of thing, and we pick and choose. But this was part of an overall strategy and report, and I think some overall analysis. So as a starting point for a discussion, my hope would be that the Regional Services Commission could take this and look to expand it to include the region so that they have a basis for their financial budget discussions moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor. I have no questions for you, so I guess I will call the question. Oh, wait, hang on. Councillor Harris has a question.
Just looking for, I guess, piling on to some of that, Your Worship. You know, I can remember when we were having some of the municipal reform conversations around local governance and hearing from Mayor Grant, as I, mentioned some of these things off for consideration, mentioned that there had been no cost benefit analysis done, that it was just a cost analysis. So there's some language in here I just want to be clear about. And then I have a question for the councillor after that. Is this what we're looking to try to achieve here, that the Regional Service Commission would commission kind of an expansion of that study so that we see that cost benefit analysis? Or would it be looking wider than that? Just looking for clarification.
Councillor Sullivan, back to you.
I think you're right on top of it there, Councillor. I'm a finance guy. I like to see the analysis, and I guess I bring this forward as this is kind of the St. John perspective a couple of years ago on the region, but now that we are regionalized, I would love to see a cost benefit analysis that it's not just these numbers and okay, let's figure this out, everybody's costs. But one of the weaknesses, I'll admit, in the Gardner-Penfold report is it talks about our costs, but what benefit do we, the city, get in property tax of having the suburbs? So I just think if we're going to have a regional conversation about money, we need to have a regional study about money. And so that's really at the core of it. Here's a starting point, but yeah, I would love to see it big and broad.
Yeah, and I just would agree with that fully. We don't often have an agreement on what the facts are when we're in some of these conversations. And so it becomes frustrating, everybody uses this example or that example, and half the time they're anecdotal and not based on data. So I would, I'd be fully supportive of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's it for questions. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is 12.1 on the agenda. It's a business matter and report entitled 10-Year Strategic Plan.
City Manager, over to you to introduce.
Your Worship and members of Council, good evening. 2 weeks and 1 day ago, we introduced the draft 10-year strategic plan to Council. This began a 2-week period whereby Common Council, or a minimum of 2-week period, I should say, whereby Common Council was afforded the opportunity to reach out to staff to seek clarifications, ask questions, or express concerns. Since input has been sought from Council throughout the development of the plan, I'm pleased to report that there were no significant comments or concerns expressed over the past 2 weeks. Therefore, we are comfortable with, and I am extremely pleased on behalf of the steering committee and the entire staff of the City of St. John to introduce this evening the 10-year strategic plan for final approval. I would like to recognize and pass the microphone to the current project lead, Ms. Stephanie Rackley-Roach, who will offer some key points.
Thank you, and good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. Tonight, the City Manager recommends that Common Council approve the St. John 10-Year Strategic Plan. The 10-Year Strategic Plan focuses on the next 10 years to realize a vision for the community. This strategic plan provides guidance to all other strategic planning efforts within the city to align strategic direction and manage limited resources to achieve maximum benefit for the community. The strategic plan will allow the city to be flexible and adapt to new realities over the next decade with a focus on our goals. The goals established in the strategic plan are centered on uplifting the community and residents. With a focus on continuous improvement, the city will continue to build a vibrant, prosperous, service-oriented, and accountable city to be the city of choice. Residents are encouraged to view the plan on the city's website and an updated St. John Shape Your City site in both official languages by the end of the week. There will be a communication coming out, I think this evening or first thing in the morning, as well as residents can go right onto the website and we'll see that within a day, definitely within the English. With the approval of the 10-year strategic plan, a second recommendation is to transition the strategic plan steering committee to an ad hoc Committee of Common Council comprised of councillors as appointed by the nominating committee. This strategic plan is a living document intended to help St. John grow upward and create a place where everyone can thrive over the next 10 years and beyond. It will be reviewed at regular intervals with support from this ad hoc committee of council to adapt to opportunities, challenges, and financial capacity. I would like to thank the members of the Strategic Plan Steering Committee for their guidance and commitment throughout the process. I will turn this over to the city manager to close out this item.
Your worship, members of council, whenever we produce a document that is relatively short, concise, as this strategic plan is, one can easily draw a perception that we got there with a minimal amount of work. Anything could be further from the truth in terms of this plan. There was a hockey sock, soccer sock, and cricket sock full of work that went into this by the entirety of the staff, the steering committee, and our community partners. So I would just like to recognize that effort in your worship. I know that you're going to recognize specific aspects of that, and I will, of course, defer to you. But the amount of work and why it took as long as it did needs to be recognized. And with that, your worship, I pass the microphone back to you.
Thank you, City Manager. I will just say to people, if you should really take some time to have a look at this document. The team chose 4, and Councillor Harris was the chair on this committee for us for this term. And we chose vibrant, prosperous, service, and accountability. And they're all broken down, and they have the objectives and the actions there, the years that they will start, starting with 23 and going through to 27. So it's very informative, it's very exciting, it's very interesting. It's a lot of things that the public has been asking for. So it's a wonderful document. I think you will really, really enjoy it. And I guess before I do call the vote, I will say, I do want to thank you, Stephanie, as the lead on this. There's been 2 steering committees for this. The last council began it, so there was a steering committee with that crew. There's a steering committee now. We've had our same community reps. We've got Nicole Fair on there. We've got Morgan Lanigan on there. And we've got Carrie Tasanchuk. And we've got you were busy working, I think, probably on the transit audit at the time when the first go around, and Ian was busy working, Ian Fogan was working on this the first go around, and you two have just sort of traded places. So it's been amazing. And when I just look at how all of our staff would have had to engage with this to really come up with those objectives and the actions, like it's really been an entire staff, project, and everyone seems to really have engaged with it, I guess, and very enthusiastically about it. So it's really wonderful to see. When I read that, it would inspire me to, if I didn't live here, it would inspire me to move to St. John, I think, because it does have so many of the things in it that today's societies are looking for a lot of quality of life in there. So I want to say thank you. Anyway, so I will call, I don't have any questions here. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Oh, sorry. I need a motion. Sorry, Councillor Harris and the deputy. Sorry. I'm just too anxious. So I have a motion on the floor. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you again. Next item, City Clerk.
Your worship, next on the agenda is under consideration of issues separated from consent agenda. So that would be now item 14.1. It appeared on your agenda as 5.7, and that's the report on living wage and food security advocacy.
Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Redwan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so I mean, I certainly appreciate the spirit of this, but I'm not an economist, but I do have a minor in economics, and it's just not this cut and dry for me. I understand maybe the government even looking at like a guaranteed income for people, but especially the way this is worded, we have about 80% of small businesses in St. John. And it could be just absolutely crippling for the city if the government were to just enforce minimum wage of almost $22 an hour without making any other changes to supply chain. And the pressures that people are facing right now is incredible, and the pressures that small businesses are facing are incredible. And I couldn't help, I thought about the city market when I thought about this this item, and I thought, oh my gosh, like that could just that could have some extreme challenges if they looked at this as just a one item change. It has to be looked at from a micro level when it comes to economics. And I know that it sort of sounds like this in the letters, but not exactly. So, I mean, I just think that there needs to be an economist kind of on this sort of thing, making these sort of recommendations. And although I totally appreciate, I think that, you know, as a small business owner, you know, I think we all would love to pay our staff even more than we already do, because, you know, they work hard and you do what you can. But there's a lot of businesses that, you know, I just went to a chamber event and there's so many businesses that are struggling right now. So I think this has to be looked at from a micro level. It's not this cut and dry, and I appreciate the spirit of it because people are having some challenges right now nationwide, not just in St. John. But I'm just going to vote against it for that reason.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Ogden in just a second, but Councillor Radwan, so you are objecting to the living wage letter. There's two letters in there in 5.7, or both of them, or one of them? I'm just looking to be clear.
Yeah, and I think it has to be both of them because it's kind of pinpointing. Like I don't think that we have I don't know that I have the background to be able to support both letters, but I appreciate the spirit of both, and there are food insecurities and all of that, but it needs to be looked at a little bit at a higher level, I think.
Okay, Councillor Ogden, over to you.
Yeah, I understand where what Councillor Rodwin's talking about, small business. I grew up family small business, and that would be a real struggle, especially today in today's climate. I think one thing we could get the province and the feds to look at is economies move ahead when the average income is a little bit higher. And St. John has a lower average income than the Valley, than Fredericton and Moncton, and losing those 5,000 federal jobs with their benefits and other things, our property tax, and that certainly keeps our incomes low. And I think if the province and the feds could say, okay, here we have a low-income community, what can we do? This was done in St. John's, Newfoundland, Miramichi, Moncton when they lost the Sea and Shop. So I think if we can get them to focus on the average income in St. John and the effects on the economy, that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Your Worship. You know, when things like this come up, I feel like this is where we get off track, because the wording in this seems to me that we're asking the provincial government to investigate a living wage and options for food recovery. We're not requesting it. We're not demanding it. We're asking them to investigate it. I'm a small business owner. I get it. We can only afford to pay what we can. But this is a motion to send a letter on both fronts asking them to investigate, not to do it, not to take action on this. I think we need to be clear on that and not get off topic.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harris, over to you.
Yeah, Your Worship, agree full-heartedly with Councillor Stewart. You know, this council's not at the level where we can set policy and we can set implementation strategies for any of these types of letters that we're requesting. It goes along with our counterparts in Halifax, Moncton, and Fredericton who've called for this. You know, and we don't have to be, you know, experts in the field to be able to look at the growing field of research. I just pulled up one that I had looked at before in previous conversations, where, you know, Wharton University put out a study on universal basic income and a very complicated, complex model which demonstrated it would grow the economy. So there is always going to be, you know, competing research that you find, but that's the point. We need our higher level public officials who are elected and those higher level groups to be able to do their due diligence. But when they hear a groundswell of support for something, that's what moves them into action. If it's just a few activists on the outskirts that are saying something would be a good idea, and even our lower level, which we're closer to the people than anybody, if we're not aligning on some of these ideals and best practices, then I think, you know, it gives too much too much credence to the higher levels to just ignore the issue. And this is no longer an issue we can ignore. We know that people who are under 40 account for a lot less of the overall wealth in our nation than, you know, people in the last generation did at that age, and it's not getting better anytime sooner. So there does need to be a reform of a major scale on incomes and for the working class, and this is an opportunity for us to get the provincials and federal government to work on it and to look at it seriously.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Radwan, back to you.
Yeah, just quickly, Mayor, I appreciate what Councillor Harris had to say, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. So I appreciate the conversation. I will change my vote. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess I'm going to leave it up to my team here, and I will call the vote. Wait, do I have a first? Hang on. Do I have? Councillor, Ogden, do you want to move that for us? Since it was your initial motion, okay. And I'll take a seconder on it. Councillor Sullivan, on the question? All in favor? Opposed? Moved unanimously. Excellent. Next item, City Clerk.
Next on the agenda is item 15.1 under general correspondence. It's a letter from Second Harvest Food Rescue App requesting to present to Common Council with a recommendation to refer to the clerk's office to schedule.
Councillor Killen. I need a seconder on it. Councillor Harris. On the question, Councillor Ogden.
Information on it. I don't think I have enough information on it. There's so many food groups out there. I'm not sure which one this is. Even if Councillor Harris, if you have some information, can you send it to me?
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Harris, yeah, you said you did have some information. You can send it to Councillor
Thank you,
Ogden.
Brent.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Okay, on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Excellent. Next item, City Clerk.
Next, Your Worship, is item 15.2. It's a request to purchase tickets at Hospice Greater St. John Fundraising Gala. Recommendation refer to clerk's office to purchase tickets for interested council members.
Okay, Councillor Killen and the deputy, or sorry, Councillor Radwan and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
And next we have the motions that came from Committee of the Whole. So the first item would be a resolution with respect to cyber attack recovery, legal action. The motion would read that the City of St. John commence an action against AIG Insurance Company of Canada for claims under 2 of the city's insurance policies, policy number 3630316 and policy number 03-981-9830, related to the loss incurred as a result of the cyber attack that was discovered on November 13th, 2020.
Okay, I'll need a motion for that. Councillor Sullivan. The deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor, all right, did you have your hand up for opposed? Oh, okay. All right, motion carried. Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is a Committee of the Whole resolution with respect to IT security quality assurance. The resolution would read, resolve that the city enter into a statement of work agreement with Mariner Partners, Inc., generally in the form presented to Committee of the Whole at its meeting held on November 1, 2022, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute said agreement and any documents ancillary thereto.
Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Norton on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
And the final recommendation from Committee of the Whole is with respect to legal proceeding against BGC Engineering, Inc., West Wells litigation update and Tories retainer. The resolution would be that the July 8, 2019 resolution of council pertaining to Tories retainer for legal services required in relation to the West Wells as amended on December 16, 2019, and again on March 23, 2020, be further amended as follows to reflect the legal costs associated with pursuing a formal legal proceeding in the Court of King's Bench. The words not to exceed $765,000 plus HST and disbursements are deleted and replaced with not to exceed $1,140,000 plus HST and disbursements.
Thank you. Counselor Lowe is going to move that. Need a seconder on the deputy, on the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
That's the final item.
Final item, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Counselor Lowe and Counselor Ogden on the question. Carried. Thank you, team. Good night.